good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Great to see you all. It's been a while. Hope everybody's doing well. And we're going to start off with calling the meeting in order. And once again, to welcome you to meeting number 7 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Members, the committee is meeting today because a meeting was requested by 4 members of the committee pursuant to Standing Order 106-4 to discuss their request to undertake a study of ministers' spending priorities. Today's meeting is taking place in person, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will also show the person speaking rather than the entire committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Occupational health and safety have requested that we will limit our movement in the room throughout the meeting. Individuals should always respect social distancing rules and remain 2 meters away from one another. Should you need to move around the room, please follow the arrows on the floor. To minimize health risks, you will note that limited personnel has been permitted to attend today's meeting. Staff have received a phone number where they can listen into the proceedings in real time. You will note as well that no paper documents have been distributed. All documents have been distributed electronically to all members. Should you require a copy of a document, please advise the clerk of the committee immediately by emailing the committee at tran@parl.gc.ca. With that, I'll go to Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move a motion immediately that the committee immediately undertake a study on the spending priorities of Transport Canada and Infrastructure Canada, and that the Minister of Transport and the Minister of Infrastructure each appear for 1 hour separately in the context of this study today.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Are there any questions or comments to that motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. Okay, we're just going to suspend briefly so we can start the meeting and bring the minister on board.
And I will apologize to our colleagues that we broke the rule already.
Okay, with that, members, if we can reconvene the meeting. We have Minister Garneau with us. And with that, Minister Garneau, and welcome. Welcome, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good to be with you.
With that, we're going to allow the Minister 5 minutes. Did you want to adjust the volume? Mark, can you give us a voice over here?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you hear me?
Fine, members, that's fine.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Great. Thank you, Minister Garneau.
Very good.
Good. With that, we will start with the Minister's 5-minute opening.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président, de nous avoir invités pour vous présenter le budget supplémentaire des dépenses à...
Thank you, Chair, for the invitation to present. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the invitation to present and discuss Supplementary Estimates A for Transport Canada and the federal agencies and Crown corporations in the transportation portfolio. I'm pleased to be joined today by Deputy Minister of Transport, Mr. Michael Keenan, Assistant Deputy Minister of Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ryan Pilgrim.
Today by noting the significant impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the transportation sector here in Canada and indeed around the world. On behalf of all Canadians, I want to thank the transportation workers who help ensure the steady flow of essential goods and services during the COVID-19 crisis. This includes truck drivers, flight and train crews, air traffic controllers, dock workers, and many more. Transport Canada strives to be transparent. This is why the department links each grant and contribution vote to its purpose. The Supplementary Estimates A, now before committee members, include a summary of incremental financial requirements, as well as an overview of major funding requests and horizontal initiatives. Transport Canada continues to foster a modern, leading-edge transportation system that will support Canada's growth for years to come. Canada must be ready for new technologies, such as connected and automated vehicles. And when new technologies can help us promote cleaner, more efficient modes of transportation, we must be ready to integrate them. To this end, the supplementary estimates A include $47.3 million to extend the Incentive for Zero-Emission Vehicles program. Originally announced in Budget 2019, this program will help achieve key targets for new light-duty vehicles in Canada, with objectives of 10% by 2025, 30% by 2030, and 100% by 2040. Deux postes se rapportent à Via Rail.
Two items relate to Via Rail. Our national passenger rail carrier aims to provide a safe, secure, efficient, reliable, and environmentally sustainable service, in addition to service through the Quebec City to Windsor corridor and long-haul service between Toronto and Vancouver and between Montreal and Halifax. Via Rail also serves many regional and remote communities. For some of these communities, Via Rail is the only year-round transportation option. The supplementary estimates A request $264.6 million to ensure that Via Rail continues to operate reliably and to maintain its capital assets adequately. The second item for Via Rail relates to proposed high-frequency rail service in the Quebec City to Windsor corridor. The supplementary estimates A include $14.7 million for research and preparatory work related to the proposal. Of this amount, Via Rail requests $12.8 million and Transport Canada requests $1.8 million. This work is important to consider how the high-frequency network would complement and operate in tandem with other rail services in the corridor.
Is seeking $309.4 million to help ensure that air travelers and workers at airports are effectively screened. This funding will support increased use of full-body scanners as well as other initiatives. In Budget 2019, the Government of Canada announced its intention to introduce legislation that would enable Transport Canada to sell the assets and liabilities of CATSA to an independent, not-for-profit entity. To this end, the supplementary estimates include $2.8 million to support negotiations for this transition. The final item I will highlight is a request for $84.9 million for Marine Atlantic. A Crown Corporation, Marine Atlantic operates ferry services on two routes between the province of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador. Monsieur le Président, je crois que les...
Mr. Chair, I believe the items I have outlined today demonstrate the direction that the Government of Canada is pursuing to keep transportation in this country safe, secure, efficient, and environmentally responsible. I look forward to continuing to hear the feedback from committee members, and I look forward to continuing our work to strengthen our transportation system and build a strong future for Canada. Thank you very much.
We'll start off with Member Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the Minister for being here. Minister, I'll ask that wherever possible, please keep your answers as succinct as possible, please. Minister, are you familiar with Order Paper Question 359? You signed off on it on April 11th.
Yeah, if you would remind me, Mr. Doherty, of what it says.
I asked if you would be increasing Via Rail's subsidy, and you said no, yet today you're asking for $277 million. Can you explain why?
Yes, the way it works is that we provide funding to Via Rail initially at the beginning of the year, and then we provide additional funding as the year goes on. That's a normal process in government under previous governments as well.
Minister, do you know aviation's global economic impact, the total amount?
Well, I have seen IATA projections that are in the hundreds of billions, yes.
It's $2.7 trillion. Minister, do you know the Canadian aviation sector, what it generates in GDP annually?
It is a considerable amount. The precise percentage, I think, is somewhere under 10%, but I don't have the exact figure.
It's $35 billion. Do you know how much travel and tourism generates in Canada annually?
Tourism is extremely important, and certainly the air sector is a vital part of it.
It's about $100 billion. Minister, will you extend rent relief for NAS airports until the traffic recovers?
As you know, we've extended rent relief for the remainder of this year. We continue to monitor the situation, and no options are excluded because obviously we want our airports to continue to function.
Minister, will you work with regional community airports of Canada to increase the ACAP funding?
We are working with regional and northern airports to ensure that they are capable of continuing to deliver essential services, say in the near future. We have already provided $17.3 million to the three territories.
Minister, when was the last time you talked to Air Canada?
I spoke to Air Canada probably about a week and a half ago, and I have a call with them, in fact, a meeting with them next Monday.
When was the last time you talked with WestJet?
I am also in regular contact with WestJet. I can't give you the exact date when I spoke to Ed Sims, but I have spoken to him on a number of occasions during this crisis.
When was the last time you spoke to the Air Transport Association?
You're talking about ATAC?
ATAC.
I have not spoken to ATAC, John McKenna, recently, but my officials have.
Minister, when was the last time you spoke with Canadian Airports Council or anyone from the airports industry?
I have spoken to some officials in our airports. For example, Ms. Flint, who is responsible for the GTAA recently. Yesterday, my chief of staff was in touch with Monsieur Rainville, I beg your pardon, who is the president of the Trudeau Airport. So we keep in contact with the airports, the airlines, and in fact with NAVCAN as well. All of them hit by this pandemic.
Your testimony is suspect, Minister, and the reason being is that we're in constant contact with our aviation industry writ large, and repeated I guess, entities within the industry, both airline and airports, have written you, have tried to contact your office and yourself, and they all are coming back and saying that they've had no discussions with you, limited discussions with you, especially during the, no discussions with you and no response during the COVID crisis.
Well, Mr. Doherty, I take exception to what you just said. I am very much, and my department and my officials, in touch with the airlines, the airports, and the organization of how much they have been profoundly affected by this
Minister,
crisis.
Could you then table with
I resent
Minister, could you then table with this
insinuation that I am not paying attention to them?
Minister, could you then table with this committee at your earliest convenience any discussions that you've had with WestJet, Air Canada, any of our small Tier 3 carriers, Air North, Central Mountain Air, Pacific Coastal, to name a few, ATAC, and the Canadian Airports Council at your earliest convenience?
We have a lot of information, a lot of letters back and forth, telephone conversations. I couldn't possibly provide all of that information to you, but I'm telling you that we are in touch with them, and you suggesting that we are not is totally false.
Minister, that's coming from our stakeholders. That's not coming from me. I'm just reiterating their message. Minister, Marine Atlantic will be receiving an additional $85 million, an increase of approximately 150%. Can you explain why this increase?
One moment, please. This funding is from an off-cycle funding decision in 2020. Marine Atlantic, of course, provides the constitutionally mandated ferry service between Newfoundland and Labrador and Canada's mainland. Marine Atlantic will continue to provide its ferry services. The funding will cover the operating shortfall and capital requirements of the corporation. Again, like with Via Rail, this is a standard procedure.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Mr. Scarpaleggio.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Minister. I'd like to speak a little bit about, or ask a question about the Zero Emissions Vehicles Program. I believe there's $47.8 million allocated to the incentives for Zero Emission Vehicles Program in the supplementary estimates. And I'm wondering, what I'd like to know is what was the increase in the first year of the program, and was it in line with what you expected? And supplementary to that, are we on track to meet our target? Is the uptake a good positive uptake?
Well, thank you, Mr. Scarpaleggio. Originally, as you know, $300 million was approved in the budget, and we expected that this would be deployed over a 3-year period. However, the uptake in the first year was more than we expected, and to our very pleasant surprise, of course, because of our commitment towards cleaner vehicle technology. And this amount of $47.8 million is planned spending that comes from that $300 million funding envelope and would be for as we move forward. In fact, we doubt much, although COVID has slowed down things, as you can appreciate. We were feeling in January that there would be very low probability at $300 million lasting.
So a bit cut off there at one point.
Much past August of this year. That may be a little longer now because of the slowdown.
Thank you. There's a point of order. Minister Garneau, you're cutting out. So if you can repeat the last, I'll say 10, 20, well, the last statement.
Okay. I did notice a cutout there. Can you hear now?
We can hear now, yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Someone should ask him if he had more reliable communication with Earth when he was orbiting. He's in the time machine.
Pardon me? I think we lost him, yeah.
Rural broadband.
So who wants to take the first shot? Because you're going to have a heyday at this one with him.
Where are you? Just in between here and the moon?
I brought a granola bar. I figured there was no food. It's weird. I sat in Prague last Parliament, and Larry, as the chair, would always order essentially a full dinner for lunch. And we had a meeting, and I'd go there and I don't want pork chops and mashed potatoes for lunch. it was always like a big plate of pasta. Oh yeah, it was like nice to, and so I would just have a bowl of soup and a salad. It was always
Okay. Folks, we're gonna suspend for a moment till we get Minister Garneau back.
Mr. Chair, I'm back with you. It's Minister Garneau. I lost the link.
Okay, so we have Mr. Pardon me? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll now resume. Mr. Scarpaleggia, you got about 2.5 minutes left.
Thank you very much.
And it's all yours.
So if you don't mind, Minister, I'll move on to via rail. We know that there's some planning going on with respect to a high-frequency rail link from Quebec City to Toronto, and of course, that's of great interest to my constituents because we're along the route. And I was wondering if you could give us an idea of where we are in terms of coming to the end of the planning stages and starting the project. And also, in terms of COVID security, I believe that it is not required to wear a mask on trains, yet it is on planes, and that sounds counterintuitive, but I'm sure you can explain the difference.
Well, thank you, Mr. Scarpaleggia. With respect to the high-frequency train, the progress is continuing. Despite COVID, we've been able to move ahead on this project. As you may know, there was a joint project office that was struck with composed of people from the Canadian Infrastructure Bank as well as from VIA, and they are continuing to in the final phases of the assessment of this proposed link between Quebec City and Toronto. They are making steady progress and are on schedule, and will be making recommendations to the government later this year. And so we hope that we'll be in a position sometime before the end of this year to make a decision on whether we will go ahead with this project and in exactly what form it will be, because we do believe that this is something that shows the promise of providing a faster service and a more reliable service. As you know, it would use its own rail lines, dedicated rail lines. With respect to the measures, at the moment there is limited service operating on VIA because of COVID, and there is a requirement for only 50% volumes in each of the passenger cars, no more than that, to preserve distancing. And it is recommended that people bring their masks and wear their masks where physical distancing is not possible. That hasn't happened very much so far because of the low volumes. Essentially, they're below 10% compared to normal volumes. The difference between it and aircraft is that we know that in aircraft, the whole process of going to the airport, going through security, going to the gate, getting on board the airplane is a difficult environment to preserve physical distancing, and we felt it was extremely important to mandate the wearing of masks. We think that a different approach can be used with respect to either passenger ships like ferries and rail operations, where the approach is to recommend that masks be worn.
Thank you, Minister, for that.
Quick question, Mr. Scarpaleggia?
Do I have time for one more?
One quick one, yeah.
Yes, this is on behalf of my colleague Terence Rogers, who couldn't be here. Can you elaborate on the role of Marine Atlantic in supplying Newfoundland with food and other essential supplies? Can you comment on whether residents of Newfoundland and Labrador had any reason to be concerned about their province's food supply during the COVID crisis?
Minister?
Thank you for the question. And as you will know, the Marine Atlantic Service is a constitutionally mandated service. It happened after Newfoundland and Labrador became part of Canada. It is a vital lifeline to provide the capability to move people and goods. And we are very mindful of that, and I can tell you that we're monitoring the situation very closely. Because of the fact that one company called OceanX, which also resupplies Newfoundland, had reduced some of its service, and we have the capability through Marine Atlantic, which also can carry a great deal of cargo, to ensure that Newfoundlanders will not go without the vital supplies and goods that they need. So the situation is very much under control, even though the number of marine Atlantic ferry passages has diminished because of the low volume of people.
Thank you,
very
Minister.
much.
Thank you, Mr. Scarpellegia. Mr. Barcelou-Duval.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I liked some of the questions asked by my Conservative colleague, and that brought to mind some when he asked whether you met airlines very often over the past few months. I am reassured to know that you are in constant communication, but I would like to know if you had the opportunity to discuss with other groups like Air Passenger Ride and other consumer groups since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you. I am very aware of the situation with regard to that question. The reimbursement credits, because I receive lots of communications, particularly via social media, and because you also ask me very many questions about the situation, so I'm very aware of the situation. I understand you, Mr. Minister. I understand that the answer is no, you have not had the opportunity to meet them. That may be a good thing. This may give you ideas on how to better defend the rights of passengers. Talking about Supplementary Estimate A, there is no supplementary amount for the National Transportation Agency. I would like to know if there's enough money for the law to be implemented so that travelers could finally be reimbursed for cancelled flights. Thank you for the question. We increased their budget compared to last year, and that was in anticipation of more demands from passengers. And there are other issues, for example, accessibility, for which they have major responsibility. Certainly, the number of communications with the board is higher than anticipated, but we increased their budget this year. Thank you. You would understand that I'm somewhat disappointed because the Transportation Board is supposed to be the organization that defends travelers and passengers. And this agency is authorizing the airlines not to reimburse passengers. It even gave airlines the right not to process any complaint up to a certain date when we know that flights were cancelled. And when people finally had their complaints processed, we hear that there are about 14,000 complaints pending. It would take a long time for that to be processed. So when a journalist, Melanie Melki from La Presse, put a question to you, you did not even bother to answer. It's someone else who answered. And I quote, complaints will have to be investigated by airlines as they see necessary. I would like to know if you would finally look into those complaints. I'm very interested because I hear about it every day, and I'll make some adjustments in the way you described the role of the board. It's a judiciary organ that is there to make sure that when there's a complaint, complaints are processed to make sure that airlines process the complaints while respecting all rules or regulations before they take decisions. So we are not there just to defend them, but to make sure that the right decisions are taken when it comes to who is right and who has to be compensated. Another question I have for you, the credits that are given by the airlines, I wonder if they are legal tender in this country. Can we pay our taxes, for example, with these travel credits? The interpretation of the rules concerning these credits and reimbursements are related to the rates of the airline companies. And the rates do not always mention reimbursement. So those have to be read to find out if a credit or reimbursement is required. and that is something I encourage people to do. But my question is to know if travel credits are legal tender. I'm not talking about airline companies having the right to do that, but can we use that, for example, to pay our taxes? Is it legal tender, for example? Is it a recognized currency? I imagine the answer is no. Good question. I do not have an answer for you. I would come back to you on that. My next question. WestJet announced it will reimburse some passengers and they are not bankrupt, as you claimed that airlines may go bankrupt. Air Canada had $6 billion in cash at the beginning. Now they're at $9.7 million. So they have more cash. So they are not anywhere near bankruptcy. For Air Transat, they said that they are ready to reimburse passengers if they receive some assistance from the government. So I wonder if the government intends to give them some assistance in the future. Would this depend on passengers being reimbursed? Let me give you a picture of the situation with airlines. All are considered. I'm not sure you mentioned all considerations. There are other airlines as well. At this point, the situation is that many of these airline companies are not operating at all or very little. So they really have almost no revenue. So the situation is very bad for some of these airline companies. At the same time, as I said, I expect the airline companies to do everything possible to compensate passengers the best way possible when the circumstances would allow, because it's an obligation for them. At this point, given the situation, some programs have been introduced, the wage subsidy for airline companies. Some are using it. Thank you. I think you've answered my question. Well, you said.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for appearing today. I'd like to pick up where my colleague left off, and with the issue of refunds for passengers who purchased tickets they were not able to use. And maybe I'll start by just asking you very bluntly whether you are considering forcing the airlines to provide full refunds to passengers who are not able to use their tickets.
Well, thank you for your question, Mr. Bachrach. We are following the situation. As I have said to the previous speaker, MP, I'm encouraging the airlines to provide the best possible compensation to their passengers when circumstances permit. Some of these airlines are not in a position to do this at this time, and it's important for consumers also to be aware of what the tariffs actually say. Those are the contracts of their ticket purchase. It's not as clear-cut as many people may think. In the best of all worlds, we'd like to make sure that all passengers are happy, but as you know, the airlines have been hammered by this pandemic, and some of them are not operating at all, and some of them are operating at below 10%, and yet are still facing serious fixed costs.
I would offer that Canadian families, many are hurting financially as well, and the cost of an airline ticket can be quite steep. Other authorities around the world have taken different approaches. April 3rd, the U.S. Department of Transportation issued an enforcement notice, and I'll just read the one sentence that stood out to me. Quote, "The obligation of airlines to provide refunds, including the ticket price and any optional fee charged for services a passenger is unable to use, does not cease when the flight disruptions are outside of the carrier's control." We've seen similar decisions in the European Union and the UK. What does it say to you that Canada's consumer protections are so out of step with what these other countries are doing? And after this situation is over, is improving these consumer protections for air travelers a priority of your government?
There's no question that this pandemic was something that was never anticipated when we were looking at putting in place the passenger protection rights, and it is something that we will be looking at. It was a totally unexpected situation, so that we can know in the future how to deal with this in a clear manner. I would say to you that it's often brought up that Europe and the United States have taken a different approach. I would ask you to look more closely at individual countries and airlines, I think you'll find that the reality is not quite the way that you presented it. It's a complex situation, and European and American airlines are suffering as much as Canadian airlines.
Well, I imagine for the consumers that are out thousands of dollars, the situation to them is quite stark and quite simple. So I would offer that. My next question concerns Rule 40 of the CTA's Code of Conduct, which states that members shall not publicly express an opinion about any past, current, or potential cases or any other issues related to the work of the agency. Assuming that the statement on vouchers from March 25th came from the members of the CTA, do you have any concern that Rule 40 was breached?
I believe that the CTA made a further statement of clarification after that. I don't have that. Perhaps I can turn to my deputy minister on that. But if we don't have that with us, I know that the CTA did provide additional clarification after its initial remarks about the suitability of vouchers, although it was non-binding.
In the interest of time, Minister, perhaps I can move on to my next question. This involves temperature checks on board airplanes, and your department recently announced that temperature checks would be required for all passengers boarding airplanes. I've had those checks myself on my way here to Ottawa to attend this meeting in person. The IATA recently presented a proposal in which they call for an end to physical distancing on airplanes. Their argument is that these temperature checks are sufficient. That is something that has been contradicted by Dr. Theresa Tam, who says that they're not effective at all at identifying who is infected. Can you commit to maintaining the social distancing requirements on airplanes?
I agree with Dr. Tam that the most important measure is physical distancing. And Canada, with all of the regulations and interim orders that it's in place, is going to make sure that we continue. That number one thing, it is the most important thing. Measuring temperature, doing screening, asking additional layers to safety. Temperature measurements are important. They don't catch everybody because there are asymptomatic people. And there may be the odd person who has a fever occasionally that will be rejected, but then they've just got a simple cold. But they are an additional measure that will catch some people and add to the safety. And in fact, IATA recommends that.
Minister, different airlines are using different temperatures as their thresholds. Has your department come to a temperature benchmark to adopt across all Canadian flights?
We are working with, it is CATSA that is going to be purchasing the scanners, temperature scanners and temperature guns, and we will be working with them. Those instruments actually specify the threshold, and the same applies to the other equipment that is purchased by the airlines themselves. There is a recommended threshold above which a reading or an interpretation of having a fever is applied.
So, thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bolinelli.
Thank you, Chair, and Minister, thank you for being here. I just want to build quickly on the comments of my two colleagues who had just preceded me. They had mentioned about being in touch with their constituents and their concerns with regards to airlines and refunds and so on. So, Minister, my question to you is simply this: do you believe air passengers in Canada should be entitled to the same air rights as passengers in the European Union and the United States? Yes or no?
I believe that Canada's passenger protection rights were well designed, although I admit that we did not anticipate the effects of this pandemic, and that is something that we are going to address in the future with respect to the question of refunds and vouchers.
So you will be looking at the passenger protection of rights?
Yes, we always have said that it is something that we, if need be, are going to adjust going forward. Nobody anticipated the dramatic effects of this pandemic, and it is something that requires clarification. It is actually spelled out in the tariffs, which are the contracts, all that fine print that when you buy a ticket. And so it's not as clear cut as
Okay,
many
Minister,
people think.
quickly, I mean, so can you provide any assurance that my constituents and those that are writing all of us will be getting any refunds if they so desire?
What I can tell you is that I am encouraging the airlines. In fact, I'm expecting the airlines, when they're in a position to compensate, that they compensate as generously as possible the passengers who have had their flights canceled. That is what I am saying at the moment, and we are looking forward, going forward, looking at addressing this issue in the passenger protection rights.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I'm going to move over to small and medium-sized regional airports. Niagara District Airport, my riding and my colleagues' riding service, my colleagues' area, celebrating its 90th anniversary. And in December, the Regional Community Airports of Canada proposed an expansion of the Airport Capital Assistance Program to $95 million. Minister, what's the department's response to that, and what does it currently spend?
The Capital Assistance Program, or ACAP, has been around for about 20 years, and I believe it annually spends in the area of about $40 million. It's a very popular program, and I'm very much aware that there are airports and associations that would like to expand it as we go forward, because it is such a helpful program, especially for small airports that don't have a lot of funding.
Yeah, I'm aware of our local airport putting in a $1.5 million request. Minister, have money flows this year from ACAP?
I will defer to my deputy minister.
Thank you, Minister. Under the ACAP program, the money is flowing on sort of the regular cycle, and so we're going through the approvals of the submissions that we have received, and they've been approved for the 2019 submissions have been approved, and we'll be turning our attention to the 2020 submissions. So the program is continuing to run at the full subscription of about $40 million a year, as you indicated.
Thank you. Due to COVID, is the federal government developing any other programs to support regional and community airports?
The answer is yes, and what we are primarily focused on, because we have to address where there's the greatest need, is to ensure, particularly for remote and northern airports, that they still have the capability to function so that we can maintain essential resupply, medevac, bringing essential people into those communities. And we know that they have been hard hit, just like the big airlines, because they have had a significant drop in passengers, and therefore they're feeling the economic pinch.
Minister?
They have spoken to us, and we are working with them.
Okay, great. The mix of the governance structure for a number of these small and regional airports means that they're unable to apply for government funding and make use of instruments such as the wage subsidy program. Is that something you're aware and working on?
We are looking at the needs of small airports, particularly those with scheduled flights and those that provide essential resupply. That is where our focus is at the moment. The airports are allowed to access all of the programs of the government where the organization or the individuals are eligible.
Thank you, Minister. Also, you've allocated $2.8 million for the negotiations of the potential transfer of the Canada Air Transport Security Authority to a nonprofit entity. Minister, what is involved in that $2.8 million? Is it simply negotiation costs?
I do not have all of the details, but I think substantially it is the cost associated with the transactions that are taking place so that we can ultimately have this not-for-profit designated screening authority, but I will defer to my deputy minister once again on if he has a more precise description of the 2.8 million.
Well, before he does, I'd just like to know, I mean...
Your time's up. I'll allow for a quick answer by the Deputy Minister.
You didn't have a question?
I thought the Minister was going to refer to the Deputy Minister.
Yeah, you were going to have the Deputy Minister follow up if you had any further comment on the
Yeah, the
2.8.
Deputy Minister or my financial officer, one of the two.
To the department to assist us in negotiating with the private sector consortium to take over CATSA, as you had indicated.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baldinelli. Thank you, Minister. Mr. Sidhu.
Well, thank you, Minister, Mr. Keenan, and Mr. Pilgrim for being here today. I have some questions about the Zero Emissions Vehicle Program. I've heard from my constituents in Brampton East, a riding often characterized as a bedroom community in the Greater Toronto Area, that many people and businesses have benefited from the Zero Emissions Vehicle Program. GHG emissions reductions in the transportation sector are critical for Canada's green future. I know through our green infrastructure project, many new charging stations are coming online across the country, and I continue to advocate for more charging stations, making the decision to switch to zero-emission vehicle an easier one. Minister, is the uptake close to what was anticipated in this program?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Sidhu. The uptake in terms of people availing themselves of the incentive, which is $5,000 for a zero-emission vehicle and $2,500 for a hybrid vehicle, and this can be purchased or leased, has exceeded our expectations. And we feel that it's going to be, or the $300 million that was budgeted in 2019 will be exceeded before the end of this year. Originally, we thought August, but things may have slowed down a bit. So well over a year ahead of schedule. But I'm glad you brought up the question of charging stations, because that is an equally important program. There has to be the charging network available, and that is a program that is also funded and managed by Natural Resources Canada, and they are also funding a network to make sure that we have the necessary charging stations to charge these vehicles that people are buying.
Thank you, Minister. Do you have any insight into whether the COVID crisis will have any impact on the adoption of new technologies in the zero-emission vehicle sector? I know you briefly touched on that, but if you can just elaborate a little bit more.
I would say no in the long run. I would say that COVID has slowed certain things down, not everything. It might have even sped up certain things. For example, one bright area is air cargo. That's a booming sector now. But with respect to automated and connected vehicles, with respect to zero-emission vehicles, research on heavy-duty trucks, mission forward. But as with everything during this pandemic period, there has been some slowing down because people have to maintain physical distancing, because certain businesses have been closed. But in the long run, no, I don't anticipate that it will have any significant impact.
Okay. Thank you for that. I got one last question for you. To my understanding, light-duty vehicles emissions account for approximately 50% of Canada's transportation-related GHG emissions and 12% of the country's total emissions. What kind of impact does the Ministry of Transportation foresee the Zero Emissions Vehicle Program having on transportation emissions compared to conventional vehicles? It's definitely a great program, and then I just want to make sure that we elaborate more on that, because a lot of my constituents have questions about this.
Well, I think you said it very well. Transportation is responsible for 25% of our overall greenhouse gas emissions in this country, with all industries and sectors added in. Out of that 25%, half of it comes from light-duty vehicles, cars. And so it is incredibly important for us to make that transition towards zero-emission vehicles because, as you pointed out, it's 50% of all transportation greenhouse gases. So it will make a very significant effect. And as you know, our government has pledged to be net zero emissions by 2050. Our present Paris targets of 2030. So this is a way to do this in a dramatic fashion, and we're hoping that more and more people will turn towards that option.
Thank you for your time, Minister.
Thank you, Minister Garneau. I'm going to go over to Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon. Just to build on that, do you know what the average income is of someone claiming the electric vehicle subsidy? Do you have any idea what that would be?
No, I do not, but I will say that some of the vehicles that are eligible are in the lower price range as well as in the mid-price range, and we have excluded the high price range.
Okay, thanks, Minister. Building on the airline ticket line of questioning from my colleagues, should we have a failure of a major airline, or a small one for that matter, is the Government of Canada willing to back those tickets that it's owned to Canadians?
Well, I will say, since you brought up the question of failure, that is one option that I'm hoping that we can avoid. We want to, at the end of this pandemic, even though our airlines will have taken a beating, we'd like as many as possible of them to be able to resume so that we will live to fly again and have the choices that we currently have.
Thanks, Minister.
I'm hoping that we'll not get to that point.
No, thanks, Minister. And I'm hoping not either. That's why the government programs are important that we try and put in place. I'm wondering if you could tell us how many airlines have taken up the new LEAF program, especially our major airlines.
To this point, I'm not aware of any of them having made that final decision. Some of them may be looking at it.
Why do you think that is? Why haven't they not taken that up so quickly?
I would say you would have to ask them that question. I don't want to speculate.
Okay, Minister, would I be more or less likely to acquire Corona-19 at Pearson Airport or Union Station? In your opinion?
I would say that, in my opinion, the whole process of flying, not just being in the airport and going through security and going to the gate and what have you, but flying, that whole process all the way until you're back out of the airport at your destination is a higher risk environment than the...
So, Minister, you're saying you're more likely to get COVID-19 at Pearson Airport than Union Station. So the flying public should be much more concerned about that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you brought up the example of Union Station. That is also a place where there is a lot of go transit, and so we're getting into provincial jurisdictions here, and it's a more complicated picture than just a dedicated.
Okay, transit. Minister, I'm proud to say our air carriers fly the newest aviation equipment. As you know, a 737 transfers fresh air every 2 minutes. And I guess what I'm getting at is a number of my constituents who work for airlines feel like airlines are being almost punished when you've got to get on an airplane with a mask to fly from Toronto to Ottawa, but you can get on a Via Rail train and not wear a mask. And then they're told that basically it's more dangerous to get on an airplane than it is a train. And I'm trying to instill, and I'm sure you are, the general public of getting back in an airplane and flying, and let's instill that. So that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to say we shouldn't be scaring that there's a much higher risk and therefore you have to wear a mask on an airplane when the general public should know that you have fresh air transfer every 2 minutes.
And I would say to you that there's a risk everywhere in all modes of transportation when you cannot maintain physical distancing. But I can also tell you, before we put in place temperature measurements, compulsory face coverings on board aircraft, that we were approached by CUPE, which represents all of the flight attendants, and by the
Minister,
flight
if I
crews
can,
themselves.
thank you.
And they asked us to put in place measures to protect them as well as the passengers.
Thank you. I know in your mandate letter you were required to work closely with Via Rail, and thank you. So maybe a good news question. As you know, Canada Day is coming up. I know everyone at this committee table is so excited about that. I wondered, has your government considered, I know right now vets receive a 25% discount on Via Rail, that as an extra thank you to our veterans, whether we could possibly make it free for them on Via Rail?
Well, it's an interesting proposal. Unfortunately, I can't make that decision because Via Rail is a Crown agency. It's something that they would have to decide, and they occasionally have these special measures, at least on a temporary basis. They've done it with students to get.
I just wondered if you would support that. Would you support that, Minister?
I can't. I don't manage directly the budget of Via.
Would you support
I would defer to them on that.
Would you support it?
I'm a veteran myself.
I know, so you're the one to ask that question.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
thank you for your service.
And I take.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister.
I'm not authorized to decide that.
Thank you, Mr. Garneau. Mr. Biddle, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Minister Garneau, we seem to have left off on the same tone that we started at when you appeared back before we shut down back in March, and it's unfortunate that the Conservatives are again attacking your integrity. We just talked about your service to this country as a veteran, your service in politics all this time. I'm wondering if you can respond to the baseless allegations, because it seems that we left off on that in our previous study and we've gone back to it in terms of the estimates. So I was wondering if you can have would like an opportunity to respond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Biddle. I try to ignore gratuitous statements that are not based on any factual evidence whatsoever. I can tell you that I have spent the last 3 months working very, very closely with all of the transportation sector, and particularly with the airlines, because they have been profoundly affected by the COVID pandemic. When I say that their revenues have decreased by 90 to 95 to 100%, that's the fact. And I have been in constant touch, or my officials, with the airline industry right from the beginning. I have, spoken a great deal, and I know how organizations like ATAC and NATA and ACPA and all of the organizations, and QP on the union side, I know exactly where they stand on different issues, and I'm working, and my department is working with them to do the best we can. And so I'm comfortable that my department and I are doing the right thing.
Okay. I'd like to go back to the issue of refunds. And you talked about, excuse me, Mr. Chair, there's some heckling going on. If members, I didn't interrupt you, Mr. Doherty, during your time, so I hope for that same level of respect.
We were rolling along quite well, so let's try and keep it that way.
We talked about the reality of the situation with the refunds, and with respect to the EU, is the reality of the situation that the refund policy is not being enforced by member nations for their national airlines?
Yes, in fact, many countries and airlines have said no, they're not in a position to do it, and it is not being enforced.
With respect to the United States, the U.S. airlines received a taxpayer-funded bailout of $25 billion U.S. Is that correct?
They actually received a total package that was larger than that. It was $50 billion U.S. dollars. Part of it was to help with labor costs, essentially very close to our wage subsidy, and some of it, roughly a half of it, was loans, and to low interest loans comparable to some of the programs that we've also put in place.
But the refund mandate from U.S. authorities, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the refund policy isn't being enforced in the United States. Is that true, as far as you're aware?
Although the government Department of Transport said it needed to be enforced, as I understand it, that's not happening everywhere.
And I think everyone on this committee and yourself have mentioned the importance of having a national airline. If the government mandated refunds and that in turn led to the bankruptcy of national airlines, what would the value of an individual ticket be if they're an unsecured creditor in a bankruptcy proceeding then?
Well, of course, that's a scenario I hope to avoid because things can get worse, and we definitely don't want that to happen. There are, and I will not be able to give you a precise figure because it's information that is commercial confidential, but there are billions of dollars involved here with vouchers that airlines have committed to passengers. So there are large amounts involved here.
Okay. And I think I'm out of time. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Biddle, and thank you, Minister Garneau. That is it for our time today, and I want to appreciate your time today to come to committee and answer questions from the members. Members, thank you as well, and I'm going to suspend now to prepare for the next witness. Thank you. Thank you, Minister Garneau.
Thank you. Thank you.
we can see the minister now. Hopefully she can see us. Can you say something, Catherine, so we can make sure we can hear you?
We're very happy to be here.
There we go. We can hear her. Okay, so with that...
Nice hair. Nice facial hair there, Vance.
Thank you, Catherine, and welcome. It's great to have you out today. And we're going to start off with our first member, Member Berthold. The floor... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So Luke, I want to go to you right away, and yeah.
You know, alors vraiment, j'aimerais parler avec vous.
I would really like to speak with Luke, but at least give me 5 minutes to say something. Is that okay?
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. The health and well-being of Canadians has been and will continue to be the top priority of our government. But this pandemic has affected more than our personal health. It's having a profound effect on our economy. Le plan historique de notre gouvernement.
Our government's historic Investing in Canada plan consists in building a more resilient and sustainable future for our children and grandchildren.
Province and territory about their changing infrastructure needs and priorities. And we put in a new chair of the Canada Infrastructure Bank, Michael Sabia, a leading businessman from Quebec who headed the Caisse de dépôt. And just this month, we announced an MOU with the government of Alberta on an exciting proposal for a Calgary to Banff rail line. We're funding electric buses, renewable energy, and water projects, as well as better broadband that will help create good jobs and help communities get back on their feet.
Our government understands the challenging situation that cities and towns are in. I have spoken with provinces, territories, mayors, and Indigenous leaders, and I've heard about the financial pressures this pandemic has imposed. Which is why we are looking at ways to help them safely restart their economies without losing sight of our long-term goals to create jobs and build a stronger, cleaner, and healthier and more connected country.
Investing more than $180 billion in 12 years in 5 key priorities: public transit, green, social, trade and transportation, and rural and northern communities infrastructure. We're making great progress. Together, the 20 federal departments and agencies who deliver funding through the plan have already committed over $68 billion, investing in projects across the country, making a huge difference in the lives of Canadians. Most of these projects are either underway or completed. Projects like the ones I was happy to announce this morning in Waterloo. They are investments in public transit and active transportation, from improvements of bus shelters and pedestrian crossings to new and expanded walking and cycling routes. These will help create jobs, get more people moving, and make our cities and towns better places to live. It was great to be able to make this announcement with the provincial government as well as with the municipality. Nous proposons également de
We are also proposing to introduce a new COVID-19 funding stream that would allow provinces and territories to redirect over $3 billion of existing federal funding to projects that can start quickly.
We need to get projects going during this pandemic. As announced on June 1st, we pushed out all of this year's funding to municipalities through the federal gas tax fund, and we provided in one single payment last week. It's a first step to help ease the immediate cash crunch. We believe that better is possible when it comes to maximizing the value of infrastructure investments. That's why my mandate letter that includes instructions from the Prime Minister to look at best practices globally when it comes to assessing and funding infrastructure needs. I firmly believe that a national infrastructure assessment, which they have established in the UK, would benefit our country and our long-term infrastructure planning. I also believe there may be room to explore outcomes in a broader sense, so that we consider infrastructure projects as part of overall plans to achieve outcomes for Canadians. The idea is to better connect national infrastructure priorities with long-term provincial and municipal strategies, while also improving accountability for all orders of government, for example, from provinces and municipalities for gas tax funding. COVID has also shown that we need to ensure we are building resilient and inclusive communities. This includes affordable high-speed broadband across the country, including for people living in rural communities and First Nations, Métis and Inuit peoples, housing for all, and more access to open spaces and nature. Finally, I can assure you that I'm focused on getting value for taxpayers. We need to ensure that every dollar does double and triple duty with outcomes that benefit our climate, marginalized populations, and disadvantaged communities, while creating jobs and growing our economy. What we build and where we build matters. That is why we're focused not simply on shovel-ready projects, but also ensuring that they are shovel-worthy. Nous contribuons à la...
We are contributing to a safe restart of our economy, helping communities get back on their feet, supporting them to get more infrastructure built, like high-speed broadband, public transit, affordable housing, and clean water, creating jobs and building a stronger, cleaner, healthier, and more connected country. When Canada builds, Canada grows.
Creating jobs and building a stronger, cleaner, healthy, and more connected country. When Canada builds, Canada grows. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister McKenna. We'll start off with Mr. Berthold for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Madam Minister. It would have been nice to see you in person, given that you live right next to Parliament Hill. We would have liked to be able to talk to you in person. That will be for later. Madam Minister, how many projects have been announced and funded as part of this Invest in Canada plan? I would like to be there in person with you someday, but we need to protect ourselves. We have already presented our plan for the DPD office, more than 33,000 detailed projects. There are also some 10,000 projects tied to accommodation, lodging, and more than 12,000 municipal projects funded by the Gas Tax Fund. For about three years, the parliamentary budget director said some funds were not invested in 2018. 2018, he asked for a list of all the 53,000 projects, and he was told that no such list existed. So a few days after the parliamentary budget officer received a list connected to the gas tax fund, he was told that Infrastructure Canada doesn't have information on all projects from the housing agency. On the 12th of May, you said that the Liberal plan wasn't working. You said it was an attempt to be more efficient, recognizing the failure of the previous plan, Madam Minister. How could you request for additional funds without knowing where the sums or the amount was spent exactly? The only failure was the infrastructure project under the former Conservative Party government. Now we are transparent, but it was the former government. Three reports. Information was not being provided, or rather, the necessary funds were not provided to the Auditor General. That is not true. Mr. Chair, I will talk about another evidence of lack of transparency. In 2019, Minister Bennett signed an agreement with one of the chiefs obligating the government to consult the nation for all projects. That agreement was signed in secret and was only revealed in December 2019 when municipalities received a note from the Grand Chief talking about the obligation. Municipalities were never warned or informed by the federal government nor advised on the new way of doing things. Dozens of projects are now blocked under the FINMO plan at the minister's office because there was no consultation carried out. Work is scheduled to start soon. How many projects are blocked in your office because of this unacceptable situation, Madam Minister? Mr. Chair, first of all, we take our obligations towards indigenous people seriously. It's unfortunate that the previous government didn't do the same. But as I said in my introductory remarks, we have presented hundreds of projects. How many of those projects are presently blocked because municipalities did not know that they had to consult the Waranda Nation because the government had not told them what to do? How many projects cannot proceed? I gave you the example of Lac Mégantic, which is ready to hand out a contract. They did a tender process, but they were told they couldn't do anything. Madam Minister, how many projects are blocked because of this improvisation on the part of the government? The government should at least have informed the municipalities. Why did you not do that? I would like to talk about our infrastructure plan. Madam Minister, please answer my question. Madam Minister, please answer my question. The question I'm asking is how many projects? There are municipalities. There's work that is blocked. We are talking about a problematic situation. Municipalities need money. Canadians want to work, but they can't work because they don't know what to do to carry out the consultations. What is your department's plan to make sure that the funds are disbursed, not in the coming weeks, but in the coming days? I would say that I know that my counterpart, Minister Bennett, is working hard on that issue. But let me reassure you, on our infrastructure plan, we are dealing with those projects. Madam Minister, I can tell you about the projects you mentioned. We are talking about more than 240 million. There are many projects. Madam Minister is taking all her time to answer the questions I've asked. That's not the question. Municipalities are waiting. So what is a minister doing for those projects to be funded in the coming days? It's a simple question. I would say that I know my counterpart is working very hard on those projects. Yes, we have an obligation to carry out consultations. For projects that have been approved in Quebec, 262 in the past months, we are working very close with Minister Dubé. How many projects have been stopped, Madam Minister?
All right. Thank you, Minister. Very good to see you here today. I know we've had some really good discussions about improving public transit here in Ottawa and right across the country. So I'm going to leave that one aside and ask a couple other related questions. First of all, my community is very active, very engaged. They want to see us expand access to active transportation in my riding. Now, is there anything in the Investing in Canada plan that would allow us, that would give us access to funds to be able to improve that?
I want to thank the member for the question. And of course, that is a top priority for us, public transportation, but also active transportation. In fact, there was a great announcement just this morning in Waterloo where we're investing with the city and the province on active transportation and public transportation projects that are making a real difference, that we recognize, especially right now, that Canadians want to be able to get out, to get active, to do that in a safe way. That's why we have looked at additional flexibilities so that projects, active transportation projects, can not only just be considered under a public transportation stream that we invest in, but also under the green infrastructure stream. And we're going to continue moving forward. I know how important it is to the members' community I think there's real opportunities to make more investments. So looking forward to working directly with the member to make that happen, to improve lives, to reduce emissions, reduce congestion, and get people out in active and healthy ways.
All right, thank you for that, Minister. You also said things that about rural broadband. So my riding is part suburban and part rural. And so the rural broadband is an issue that needs to be addressed. How can we do that with this Investing in Canada plan? We need to make it better. It's just, especially now with everyone trying to work from home, it's got to be improved.
I absolutely agree with the member that we need to be continuing to make investments in broadband across the country. I think we need to be accelerating investments. The Invest in Canada, our plan includes investments in broadband through our rural and northern stream. There are also investments that are made through ISED, through CRTC. And I think we recognize right now just how critical it is. It's no longer just a productivity issue for folks to have access to high-speed, affordable broadband. It's also an equity issue. Many parents, including myself, are homeschooling our children, and they need to have access to broadband. For folks that run businesses, they're now having to run businesses virtually. So they need access to high-speed broadband. That now you can access your medical, you can access doctors and healthcare services, but you need access to broadband. This is something I'm absolutely committed to, and I know our government we're looking at how we can accelerate these investments to ensure that everyone across the country has access to affordable, high-speed broadband as quickly as possible.
All right. Thank you very much, Minister. I appreciate that. I mean, we are dealing with an immediate crisis, which is COVID, but there's another crisis on the horizon. And my riding has suffered 2 floods and a tornado in the last 3 years. So how are we going to be able to make a difference when in tackling climate change? Can that be part of this plan as well?
Well, absolutely. And we have a disaster mitigation and adaptation fund, which is intended to help support communities that are impacted by intensifying weather events related to climate change. I remember working with the member, sandbagging to help support residents that were going through floods in almost consecutive years. In between those years, there was a tornado in your riding. So your residents know full well the impacts of climate change. Our Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, we've invested more than $1.7 billion for 59 large-scale infrastructure projects, helping protect communities across the country from the threats of climate change, natural disasters like floods and wildfires. We also, the Minister of Public Safety has also invested in these type of projects, and we need to continue doing so because we know the impacts of climate change are real and that they're accelerating, and we need to ensure that we have resilient communities across the country.
All right, thank you very much, Minister. Those are words I want to hear. One other question about, we're trying really hard to actually work collaboratively. And I know I'm in contact with my provincial counterparts at the provincial level, with the municipal counterparts. How do we do that better? How do we make it so that the work that we're doing actually fits into the plans that both the province and probably more importantly, the municipalities want to see happen?
Well, thank you. That's actually a really great question. That was one of my priorities when I came in. It was to get projects approved quickly, working directly with provinces, territories, and municipalities. And I've worked very hard at that. And I will say in the province of Ontario, for example, I work extremely closely with the 2 ministers responsible for infrastructure and transportation. In fact, we have weekly calls where we talk about infrastructure. We also sometimes talk about the challenges of homeschooling our children. And we are moving forward on projects. And we also demonstrated flexibility. We've taken the time. We recognize that we need to think about how are we more flexible, respond to priorities of municipalities, of provinces and territories. We think that different orders of government that are potentially closer to to Canadians should be setting their own priorities. We've listened to that. Also, we've recognized that in the time of COVID, that there may be different challenges and different needs. So we've worked very hard to show flexibility and to work directly with provinces and territories and municipalities, really because at the end of the day, we are all here to improve the lives of Canadians. And I know full well, as do you, from all the door knocking that we've all done, that people don't want to hear about fights between levels of government. They want to hear about investments that are going to improve lives.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Ms. McCrimmon.
Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Brosseau-Deville.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good day, Madam Minister. I'm pleased to see you. Of course, it would have been nicer to see you in person. My first question for you has to do with the situation of municipalities battling COVID, have lost revenue, and they don't have the right to run a deficit. And for now, there's a study that says there's 1.2 billion missing. So this is a total loss. A lot of it is related to public transit. They lose about 70% of their revenue from public transit. Unfortunately, in the supplementary estimates, I did not see any new money for municipalities. Is that on the way? Thank you very much for your question. It's very important that we support all Canadians, including municipalities, during difficult times. We do recognize that. We know that they're losing revenue in the transport sector, public transit. It is hard for municipalities. We have to work together with the provinces. As you know, in Quebec and throughout Canada, the Constitution requires that municipalities be under the provinces, but we are working closely with the provinces. We have also provided $2.2 million to the cities and municipalities under the gas tax fund. Thank you. I understand that you gave some money from the tax fund. It's as if you're telling people, I gave you money to buy a car, buy a house, construct infrastructure, but they can't buy groceries. If they can't buy groceries, they can't do much. I would like to have a date. When will the cities be able to get help? I don't think it's a problem to send money to Quebec for Quebec to give it to the cities. All the ministers in Quebec and even from the other provinces ask you the same thing. This is a message everybody is giving you. Everyone needs money. When are you going to give them that assistance? We responded already by advancing the gas tax fund. And I would like to add that I was happy to read in the news that Kamloops said that because of the money that they received in advance, they'll be able to carry out infrastructural developments. But of course, we have to work with the provinces. I think your answer is no. I have another question for you. I did not have the opportunity to put this question to the Minister of Transport. My president was at Trois-Rivières, my leader. Studies were being announced since 2015, and sometimes we begin losing hope. Now we're asking, in the supplementary estimate, is there money for Via Rail? Well, we hear this morning. Do you have a date for us? When will the work start? I'm happy to tell members of parliament that it's a priority. It's something that was in my mandate letter. It's very important. Via Rail is working with the Infrastructure Bank, with our civil servants, to have a plan. But it's something I think is very important. We've talked a lot about it. We need a train in the region, a high-frequency train. We need to move forward. But I know that members of parliament we are paying attention to how we use taxpayers' money. In 2015, this was something that was in your electoral provinces. It's your electoral promises. Part of Montreal also wants to move forward. Everything seems to be on the right track, but we don't know when the government will give its authorization. So we don't know if it's possible to have a date when work will start. The Infrastructure Bank is studying that project closely. Work has to be done. We will wait for that. These are very important projects. But we need to do some work to make sure that these are investments that make sense. This is money from the taxpayers, so we have to be careful. Maybe my colleague would have something else to say. The Infrastructure Bank is working with Contractor for analysis before we move forward. We need to know what the investment structure is all about before work starts. So we can't give you a specific date. Thank you. I understand that the cities are waiting, the high-speed train is waiting, Contractor is waiting. And given the COVID context, we want things to move forward. I would like to know the $1 billion contract that was given to Sysmans instead of giving it to Bombardier by the former CEO who was recruited, maybe as gratitude for the work he did. You said you were going to examine that contract. We want to make sure that everything was done according to the rules. That's not really a question for us. It's a question for Transport Canada. They are the ones who will have to look into that.
Mr. Bachrach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Minister, for joining us today by video. You mentioned earlier the expedited gas tax funds for municipalities, and as a former mayor, I know that there are very few communities that wouldn't welcome expedited infrastructure funds, but the crisis facing municipalities right now when it comes to COVID-19 isn't on the infrastructure side, it's not on the capital side, it's a crisis of operating costs. And yet we still haven't seen targeted funding to support municipalities with their operating costs during this crisis. Is that something we're going to see? And specifically, is there any way your government will consider extending the wage subsidy to municipalities and providing targeted support for transit operators?
Thanks very much for the question. Of course, it's incredibly important that we support municipalities, that they have been hit hard by COVID-19, including in not receiving the revenue that they expected from public transportation. Advancing the gas tax did make a difference. I will once again reemphasize that Kamloops now says it's considering adding capital work back into its 2020 budget as a result of the gas tax being accelerated. But we also are in a process with provinces and territories. Every week, the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister meet. We are working on a safe restart agreement with provinces and territories. We've announced that we'll be contributing $14 billion, that will include a whole range of areas, including supports to cities and municipalities. But we also do need the provinces and territories to be working with us. That's incredibly important. Provinces and territories often remind us that municipalities are creatures of provinces, and I think we need to show to Canadians we can work together.
Thank you, Minister. My next question has to do with the climate lens, and from what I can tell, there's no way that Canadians can have any assurance that the $187 billion infrastructure spend is going to result in a net decrease in climate pollution. Some projects increase climate pollution, some decrease it. But overall, there's no accountability measure, and the climate lens only applies to a small portion of infrastructure projects. Are you going to consider some sort of mechanism to ensure that our overall infrastructure investment decreases greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, thank you. As you can imagine, that's a very important question for me because as past Minister of Infrastructure, of Environment and Climate Change, developing the climate plan, it required reductions of emissions across the board, including through our infrastructure plan. So the infrastructure reductions in emissions from the infrastructure plan are built into our climate plan. That is why we have a climate lens that applies to not over 90%, about 90% of all spending. It requires a climate lens in all climate-focused projects in the $9.2 billion green stream. And let's talk about the type of projects that we're funding. We're funding public transit projects, infrastructure projects, adaptation projects, mitigation projects, large-scale renewable projects. All of these projects we know reduce emissions, but I'm very focused on ensuring that we get the reductions that we need. We have committed to net zero emissions by 2050.
Minister, is there a target? Is there an infrastructure target related to greenhouse gas emissions and climate pollution?
Yes, there's a 10 megaton emission reduction requirement for infrastructure projects, which is why the climate lens is so important. It's also why it's so important that we're funding projects that we know that reduce emissions, like public transit, getting people out of their cars, like renewable infrastructure. All of these things are critically important to not only meeting our climate goals, but also ensuring a healthier, cleaner future for all.
I know I have very limited time, and I have two more questions I'd love to ask. The first one is that the Auditor General has previously urged the government to be more transparent when it comes to executive compensation at Crown corporations. You've alluded before to this so-called fresh start at the Infrastructure Bank, and I'm wondering if that new beginning at the Canada Infrastructure Bank is going to include increased transparency around the CEO compensation.
So I think it's very important to understand that the Infrastructure Bank, it's a Crown corporation. It operates at arm's length from the Government of Canada. It, as per the Statement of Priorities and Accountabilities, that they were encouraged to develop a compensation policy that reflects the best practices of Crown corporations, other comparable organizations. And that this is important. But of course, we now have Michael Sabia, who's the new chair of the board of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. He was with the Caisse de dépôt. He's very ambitious in what the Infrastructure Bank can do. And we've seen that there are real opportunities to make a difference. So I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what the Infrastructure Bank proposes going forward for projects in a whole range of areas that are included in my mandate letter, which includes a $5 billion clean power fund from the Canada Infrastructure Bank, investments in renewable energies, opportunities in public transit. Michael Sabia was involved in the RAM
Minister,
project.
I have one more question, and I'm concerned I'm going to run out of time. So thank you for that little bit of information. I'm still concerned about the parliamentary budget officer not being able to obtain all the details on tens of thousands of infrastructure projects. And in the House, you mentioned that some of these projects are confidential. And I'm concerned because it seems to me that the parliamentary budget officer should be able, as an officer of parliament, to look at confidential details. Is that not the case? And is there no way to prove, like, he's just looking for proof. He says he believes that they exist, but it's hard to be convinced. I have faith they do exist, but I don't have any proof. Is there some way that your department can provide the PBO with proof that these projects exist?
So I think it's really important. This is an important question, and it's important that Canadians understand that we've provided information about all of the projects. So 33,000 projects, we have detailed information. But when you talk, and this is important because I know the member would care greatly about this, that when we talk about CMHC projects, those are under bilateral agreements. We provided information with a whole range of those projects, but provinces and territories, to protect the privacy of individuals and the security of survivors of domestic violence, they give us aggregated claim information for some projects. They do not provide project-level detail, but their claim information is audited by a third party. In interest of transparency, we've included these taxpayer-funded projects in our overall count, but I think it's important to recognize that the information really lies with the provinces and territories. And as I say, that in these cases, for some of the CMHC projects, the information is not provided disaggregated to us, because they do not want to be providing, provinces and territories do not want to be providing us with information that would impede this privacy of individuals and securities of survivors. This has been transmitted to the parliamentary budget officer. And maybe my deputy might like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Bachrach.
what the minister had said, we provided the parliamentary budget officer with all of the information in the aggregate level from CMHC to support the information and the expenditure which are audited. We also provided the parliamentary budget officer with the information on gas tax, because 12,000 of the projects relate to the approximate spending or the approximate projects from the gas tax annually, the $2.2 billion that is expended on that fund.
Thank you.
That supports communities across the country.
Thank you. Mr. Doherty, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, for the sake of time, wherever possible, please be as succinct as possible with your answers. Minister, is it not true that your government shut down PPP Canada despite the fact that they invested over $1.3 billion in 25 Canadian projects?
I will ask my deputy to answer this. So PP3 Canada was dissolved into Infrastructure Canada in 2018. Yes, and particular projects continue to advance. Okay. And we are opening those contracts right now.
So, Minister, how many projects has the new iteration, the Infrastructure Bank of Canada or the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, announced?
Well, first of all, I'm very pleased that there was a great announcement last week that they're advancing, working with the government of Alberta, who's
total number of projects announced to date.
An investment on looking at the possibility of investing on a train between Calgary and Banff National Park. They've announced investments. I'm happy to if you just give me a moment, I'll list them for you.
I don't need the details. I just want a number.
Well, they've announced 4 investments. They also have memorandums of understanding and advisory engagements on 6 projects, from via high frequency rail to the Lulu Island District Energy, Tallston Hydroelectric, Pirate Harbor Wind Farm, Kivalliq Hydro Fiber Link, Calgary Banff Passenger Rail. And I've had many conversations with the new chair of the Infrastructure Bank about additional projects, as well as I've had discussions with my counterpart in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and across the country. There are huge opportunities, and I would hope that your party would support leveraging the project. We have more money to invest in infrastructure projects.
Minister, I'm glad to hear that you're having these discussions. How many of these projects have been completed since its inception?
Well, we are now, and I'm happy if the member would like to do a tour of the Réseau Express Métropolitain light rail in Montreal. I've had the chance to visit it. It is well underway, and it's going to make a huge difference.
So it's finished?
I think it is under construction. Okay. But I think that maybe the member would probably, I would assume the member would want us to make sure that we are being careful with taxpayer dollars. Right. So as much as you want to go ahead quickly, that these are major projects that you need to look at the business case for those projects. And as I said, the Infrastructure Bank is independent. They make decisions. But we know that there are huge opportunities to move forward, and we're working with provinces and territories to do so.
Thanks, Minister. Minister, how much did the Government of Canada pay in bonuses to the former CEO?
So just to be clear again, I think we went through this, but that this is the
Were those performance bonuses?
Operates at arm's length from the Government of Canada. That they, as per the Statement of Priorities and Accountabilities, they develop a compensation policy that reflects the best Crown corporations and other comparable organizations.
But would that be a performance? Would those be performance basis bonuses? So based on the performance of the CEO, they would be eligible for those bonuses, correct?
So once again, I said that the Infrastructure Bank develops a compensation policy, reflects the best practices of Crown corporations.
So does the minister, do you, as a minister of this department, are you aware of how much the Crown Corp paid out in bonuses?
I am not directly involved in HR discussions with employees at the Canada Infrastructure Bank. I'm happy to have my deputy provide more information about how it works. So as the minister had mentioned, this is an independent Crown who determine their own compensation framework. Okay. And upon recommendation of the Board of Directors, make those determinations independent of this ministry.
Thank you. Minister, Both the chair and CEO left very abruptly earlier this year. Why is that?
That there are changes in all sorts of organizations. That right now we have a new chair, and we're focused on the future. And
Minister,
the new
can
chair,
you tell us how
Michael
much?
Sabia, who you probably will have heard of because he was the head of the Caisse de dépôt. He advanced number of infrastructure projects.
I'm sure he's got a great background. Minister,
Quebecers.
can you tell us how much was paid out in separation or compensation for those two officers of the Crown Corp?
I cannot. The Crown corporations, operate at arm's length from the Government of Canada. And my deputy can provide, once again, reiterate the information.
And that information, they are government and council appointees, and they are independent from ourselves. So we are not involved in those determinations, nor aware of the amount that would have been paid for those amounts that you've mentioned.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Thank you, Minister. Ms. Ruminato.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you virtually, Minister. I just want to touch a little bit on some of the questions that came out earlier. So in the previous Parliament, I had the great pleasure of working with your predecessor on securing $70 million for 34 projects for the Réseau de Transport de Longueuil in my riding, including electric buses and much needed green infrastructure for our transit. And we are actually working on a project for a tramway between the Métro Longueuil in my riding to the Terminus Panama, which is the first phase, to connect up with the REM. You mentioned the REM earlier, which is underway. I can guarantee you every time I'm on the 10, there's a lot of orange cones going on, so the work is progressing, absolutely. And I wanted to get a sense from you, if you can elaborate a little more on the importance of green projects in Quebec and what you've been hearing.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Certainly, I've been working closely with the Government of Quebec. It is a top priority of the Government of Quebec, but also Quebecers, to advance projects ranging from public transit. There's a huge appetite, I can tell you, from the Government of Quebec to make investments in public transit across the province. Also, green infrastructure projects. We've seen investments ranging from electric vehicle charging stations to renewable projects. And we want to move forward with Quebec. I think Quebec is a great example of a province that understands that their competitiveness it rests on moving to a cleaner future. And they've been able to demonstrate that. Also, they are very fortunate with Hydro-Quebec. There are real opportunities there. But I think it's a great example for other provinces about how we can partner to make a real difference, to reduce emissions, to do things like reducing congestion in your own riding for residents there. And we're going to continue moving forward, looking at opportunities to partner with the Government of Quebec and improve lives of all Quebecers and, of course, all Canadians.
Thank you. And I have two other questions. Previously, we had a colleague ask about the speed in which approvals are happening. And I wanted to get a sense from you, if you could elaborate a little bit on what you're doing to help speed up some of those approvals.
Well, thank you very much. That was certainly when I came in, I had three priorities, and one of the priorities was getting projects moving as quickly as possible, working in partnership with provinces and territories. I want to give a real shout out to my deputy as well as all the public servants that are working so incredibly hard that I will get my deputy to provide you with stats about how we've been able to reduce the timeline for projects that do not require Treasury Board approval, which is a large number of projects that we have been able to exceed the timeline required. And also, I'll just say that one other thing that we have done in the time of COVID, I've explained how the flexibility is incredibly important. We have a new COVID stream that is intended to help provinces advance projects extremely quickly. We want to create jobs. We want to advance investments. So maybe I'll just ask my deputy. She can just talk about maybe the timelines and how we're exceeding the timelines, because it's a very good news story.
So thank you very much. So we work directly with provinces and territories on a daily basis. And we have a portal that we've been established that provinces and territories can download much of their information from their own systems and work with us. We have a 60-day turnaround time, and in most provinces and territories, we far exceed that particular standard. The average nationally is 35 days once we receive completed information. Now, often to provinces and territories, when they're working with infrastructure projects, they work also with municipalities and need information from them. So from the time we get the complete information to the time we actually provide the approval, it's within a month, which is a significant, reduced time frame from previous programs where we would approve the project, have to negotiate a contribution agreement, and then move forward from that, because we have umbrella agreements with all the provinces and territories. So we continually look at how we can expedite our processes.
Thank you. And the last thing I just wanted to touch on, the $14 billion for cities and municipalities in COVID-19. I know that, for instance, a lot of buses have been canceled in my riding alone just because of lack of ridership and so on. So can you talk just quickly about what we're going to be doing to help cities with these new expenses that are coming up and lack of revenue?
So, this is an issue that does come up. I've had many conversations with municipalities, including my own here in Ottawa. It's a challenging situation. We did advance the gas tax, which is a small but concrete measure that's making a difference. But there's now negotiations on a safe restart agreement with provinces and territories. We've indicated that the federal government would be contributing $14 billion. It would include support. Well, it's a range of measures, but includes support from municipalities. And I think that the key is that we want provinces to be stepping up with us. I was heartened to see a while ago that Premier Ford said that they were going to be a partner in this. They recognize how important it is. So moving forward with provinces and territories to support municipalities so that we can ensure that we get a safe restart going, but we get our economy going as well.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Romanato. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Minister. 251 days since the Deputy Prime Minister announced in the great riding of Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte, my neighboring riding in York Simcoe, $40 million commitment for the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund. And I know yourself, you always say the environment and infrastructure go hand in hand. So that makes me even more excited about that fund. So I'm wondering, when is your government going to announce the reinstatement of the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund to complete infrastructure projects in York Simcoe that require attention now?
I am happy to follow up with a member with respect to this. I don't know if my deputy has any information about this.
It is not within our ministry, so we certainly can follow up with colleagues to find out the status of.
Yeah, but there's infrastructures requests. I sent a letter regarding a dam that needs rehabilitation. These are important environmental projects that have to happen, and no one's actually responded to that letter, and like I said, we're still waiting on that. So I just wondered if you could comment on the reinstatement of the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund.
I believe that this was something that was involving Environment and Climate Change Canada funding. I'm happy to follow up with my colleague, and I certainly support the broader objectives. We do need to be working together to ensure we clean up contaminated sites, that we improve the environment, and as I say, happy to follow up with my colleague and get an answer to the member.
No, because you said good outcomes for Canadians, and that's what I expect. That's what people have put me for. So I would appreciate a follow up on that, Minister. I'm going to yield the rest of my time to my colleague, Mr. Bouteau.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Minister. Today we learned that many answers have not been provided. How many projects have been blocked because of consultations? We don't know what has been given to the former CEO of the Infrastructure Bank. We don't know how much has been invested for lodging. We don't know how much money will be available for municipalities to assist the public transit sector. How would municipalities be helped to deal with potential deficits? We know that some money has been advanced, but we don't know how the new program will work. Our federal DAD has announced $14 billion, but how will that money be used? How would municipalities use that money? There's no trust. Madam Minister, many projects are ready to move forward now. Unfortunately, the federal government is delaying progress, is delaying allowing the municipalities to move forward. What do you intend to do to help municipalities to address the public transit crisis? Why are you waiting to help municipalities to deal with all the COVID-related costs? Because right now there's no agreement and no money getting to the municipalities. There's a lot of information in those questions. But I can say that you are requesting better accountability line by line, and then you are asking for a blank check for the provinces. So what is the situation? You are not respecting the jurisdiction of the provinces, that you don't respect the capacity of municipal governments to be able to take the best decisions for their territory. Is that the case? Of course, we do respect that. But as I said, for the gas tax, Quebec is not project by project. There was an agreement with the Conservative Party. You did not ask for a line-by-line account. Now you are asking me because you are asking for information project by project. Madam Minister, you are the ones claiming that there were more than 50,000 infrastructure projects constructed, and you're saying you don't have the information. So how do you come up with the figures if you don't know how many projects were invested in Quebec? But you're talking about more than 50,000. It doesn't make sense. That's why we are asking the Auditor General to investigate. How did you get to the motion asking the Auditor General to look into the investments? I'm always ready to give information. It's different from what the former Conservative government did. We are talking about you. You are the ones who are there now. You are the ones investing billions of dollars now. That's why we're asking you for answers. It's always good to look back at what happened in the past. But we do need billions of dollars to revive our economy. So you are the ones who have to give us answers. You have to tell us how money will be spent in the future. How are things going to be accountable? It's easy to say, yes, the first few years were very good. And you yourself in an interview said we need to be more efficient. So how can you vote against our request for more funding for the Auditor General? Why did you vote against our request for investigation? I would like to tell everyone that it's the Conservative government that did cuts to the Auditor General's budget. We will do better. I think that we can always do better. That is why Conservatives signed an agreement that doesn't oblige all provinces to provide detailed reports. Madam Minister, the interpreter is having a difficulty with the back and forth.
Mr. Chair, Minister, I was wondering if you can expand for us a bit and take a little bit of time, because I know we haven't discussed it yet during this opportunity, but I believe we should, about your department's duty to consult with Indigenous peoples.
Well, thank you very much. I will say I was a bit surprised by the previous view that seemed to espouse that we shouldn't have a duty to consult. It's actually a constitutional obligation, the duty to consult with Indigenous peoples. But it's not just a constitutional duty, it's how we get better outcomes. Right now, we're having a discussion across the country, across the world, about systemic discrimination and racism, that we need to get better outcomes. And duty to consult it's not red tape. It's actually, how do you make sure that you're advancing reconciliation? How do you make sure that you're getting outcomes for Indigenous peoples? I think we should all agree that every Indigenous child should have the same opportunities as our children, the same opportunities to succeed, the same investments in infrastructure. That is what we want as a country. And I think that's incredibly important. And I think that that's a reflection that I have had recently as there's been a discussion about systemic racism. What are the social determinants of infrastructure? How do we make sure that it's not just how much money we invest, but it's where we invest and who we're investing in and who are we supporting? Think about the community centers in parts of communities that are lower socioeconomic, where they have lower socioeconomic investment status. And I think that we need to be making sure that those investments are being made, that with Indigenous peoples that we're working together, that we know that there's been an underinvestment in infrastructure, and this is something that is incredibly important. And I think all the duty consult is part of that. It is not just a constitutional obligation. As a lawyer, it is a constitutional obligation, so we need to take it very seriously. But it's also about outcomes. And I think at the end of the day, I know all of us got into politics because we believe in building a better Canada. And that is exactly what the duty consult is about. It's about building a better Canada for all Canadians, not just some Canadians, but all Canadians, including Indigenous peoples.
Thank you very much, Minister. I was wondering if you can also expand on the climate lens, because we see even during this pandemic crisis, the crisis of climate change continues. We don't have to look very far. We saw what happened in Alberta with the recent storms, and there's story after story. And again, it seems we hear from the Conservatives that this is red tape, not something worthy of discussion, but the costs of inaction are so great. And it's unfortunate, I know you can't see them, but they're laughing at that notion. And this is fundamentally serious, as I'm being shouted down on one of the most fundamental questions of our lifetime. And they continue to think that it's funny to talk about climate change. But Minister, I hope that you have the opportunity to expand on the
Point
climate
of order,
lens,
Mr. Chair.
the
Point of order.
importance for
Mr. Chair.
the government.
Point of order. Point of order.
Mr. Chair, I have the floor.
I have a point of order, Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Chair, in no way in any of the testimony of myself or my Conservatives have we said anything to the fact that Mr. Biddle has said.
I'm not talking about you, Mr. Doherty.
So,
that's not a point of order.
Well,
That's more debate. So
You have a few other colleagues and a few
Biddle.
other members of the Conservative Party and Conservative premiers across the country that scoff at climate action. And you were scoffing at climate action when I was talking about it a second ago. And you continue to shout me down and try to take away from this opportunity for the minister to discuss the importance of a climate lens. And it's interesting that I have the floor and Mr. Doherty continues to talk and continue to shut me down. And we've heard from Mr. Doherty, I believe, specifically denying the existence of climate change and stories in the press about that. And so have other of his colleagues. But Minister, can you please go ahead and discuss the importance for your
Point of order,
department?
Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Mr. Withold.
I just want to make it clear that the other colleagues that he was mentioning, it was not me.
Thank you,
The
Mr.
other Conservative.
point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Doherty.
I just want to be on record, as I have been, very clear that I do believe in climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Mr.
That's
McKenna.
good. And we all believe in climate change and that it's man-made and that we can do something about it, which is great, because that is exactly what we're doing with our infrastructure plan, that we believe the climate lens is incredibly important. And I want to give a shout out to my parliamentary secretary, Andy Fillmore, who you all know because it was through his private member's bill that we brought in a climate lens. As I said, we had already said that we needed to get a 10 megaton reduction through our infrastructure plan in emissions. But I can talk about climate change in many ways, but let's just talk about how it saves us money in the long term. That if you think about where we need to get, we've committed to net zero by 2050 as a country. But why are we doing that? Because we know that if we don't do that, the impacts of climate change are going to be so severe that they're going to have a huge impact on every aspect of our lives. And you've heard Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, talk about this. And so that's why we look at what are the investments that we're making that are going to help reduce emissions. So that can be investments in renewable energy, that can be investments in public transportation, and also what are the investments that are going to help us adapt to the impacts of climate change. That's why we have the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund that has been huge success, oversubscribed, that we need to be making sure that we think about how we're building. I like to say when you build, you can either increase emissions or you can reduce emissions. You can either become more resilient or less resilient. And that is the work that we're doing with municipalities who are on the front lines of climate change. You don't hear many municipalities doubting whether climate change is real because they have to deal with the floods, as the member McCrimmon said in her own riding, where there we were sandbagging once every few years. And so we're making those investments and we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Minister McKenna. Thank you, Mr. Biddle. And to all of you, thank you. To both Ministers Garneau and McKenna, thank you for your time today and coming out and answering questions from the members of this committee. And to members, thank you for making the time to travel on down to Ottawa and be a part of this session. And most importantly, thank you to the people beside me and behind me, the team who made this happen. Thank you very much. I know we're under challenging times right now, and for you folks to pull this off and allow us to have this meeting is greatly appreciated. So with that, I will adjourn.